Hello everyone, and welcome to Linux Forensics here at Pentester Academy. In this video, we're going to look a little bit at using volatility in order to get some networking information. As before, we're going to use our alias, which I've set up, VPA, that runs volatility with our profile, it gives it our file, and then it expects a command. So all of our Linux commands are prefixed with Linux. Not surprisingly, I can run Linux ifconfig, and this will give me a list. And here you see my 3 network interfaces. I have my loopback interface, ETH0, which was pointing out to the internet, and then ETH1, which was my VirtualBox host-only network. I can also run a netstat command. So I'll just run that. That's Linux netstat. And here we have all of the different ports and sockets that are open. Now we see there's a whole bunch of Unix ports, TCP ports. I could, of course, combine this with grep. So let me do that real quick. Let me combine this, and I'll grep for TCP. And now we see our TCP connections. And sure enough, what do we see right here? I see listening on port 7777. A Xingxi bind shell, which was process 3027. Not surprising given what we've seen before. We know that that was the process number. I also see that there's an SSH server running, a CUPS printing service, an FTP server on port 21, and some other CUPS related processes. If I repeat this for UDP, I get just a few results. Not surprisingly, port 53 is being used for DNS. Now, here's possibly a more interesting result. What if I look for Unix sockets? Unix sockets are often used for internal communication on the machine. So we'll see that there's a whole bunch of processes that are using Unix sockets to talk to each other. And none of these looks particularly suspicious, but it is something to check because you might have some malware that is also using Unix sockets for communication. Part of the reason that a malware author might tend to do this is that these aren't things that a lot of times get checked. A lot of times people look at TCP sockets primarily, and they also might look at UDP sockets, and they're a little bit less likely to have a look at these to see some inter-process communication on the machine. Another thing that you can look at the net filter. So if I do Linux net filter, it will show me my net filter hooks. So I see I have a pre-routing hook. Some other information that I can look up. I can look up my ARP table. If I suspect someone is doing an ARP-based attack, I can do Linux ARP. And here we see a few different processes that are being run. And we see the ARP table that is being used on our target. Another thing you might want to check, are there any applications using raw sockets? So we can use list raw for that. Again, another popular way to talk between applications is to use raw sockets. And we see here there are a couple of processes using raw sockets, but they're not particularly suspicious. You can recover a routing table using Linux, route, cache. That is if you have an older version of Linux. That's pretty much the main networking related plugins for Volatility. As we said, we don't see a lot of activity in this particular case, but some of the future cases that we're going to look at in this course, we will see a little bit more here. Well, that's all for this video. As always, if you're enjoying these videos here at Pen Tester Academy, please tell a friend. We'll see you soon.